Hi there guys, it's Mike from MCQ Bushcraft here. Welcome to another video. Working on the Jeep again today. You probably saw in the last video when I introduced you the garage that I'll be working in. I talked a bit about a bumper that I'm working on, and that's what we're going to carry on with today in this video. This is it. It's 2mm and it's the original bumper off of the Jeep Cherokee, although you can probably see, if you're familiar, that I have made some changes to the ends. When we touched on the Jeep in one of the previous videos, you would have already seen this bumper completed and on the vehicle. So technically, we're actually back in time. And the reason being is that I filmed these videos prior to filming the video about where I was with the Jeep and the project. And I think I mentioned in that video, that hasn't happened yet at this point, that I would be doing this bumper and have a few videos on it. If you remember, I talked about the cut and fold mod, which is where you get rid of the rear quarter panel just behind the wheel there. People do that for clearances when they're off-roading, but the stock bumper is just a bit of C-channel. It doesn't look particularly good, just having that exposed C-channel there. It offers no protection. In fact, this is the original protection, but as soon as you do that cut and fold mod, you lose all of the metal that this would clip onto. So I've done away with these and I've made my own out of box section. And this is the change that I've made here really up close. So we've got 3mm walled box section, so that's how thick the box section is, and it's 60 by 60mm. I've got two pieces here, stitch welded together down the middle. I've used P38 to do most of the filling on it, just to tidy it up. And if we look at the inside, you can see that there's another piece of 5mm box that's welded to the back of the C-channel, and it comes in and it's welded all the way round to everything else. So it can't be pushed in very easily at all without folding the bumper itself. You'll get an idea of how the bumper works if I just slot it in here. And we've got a decent amount of protection there on that corner now, and if this is tied into the frame, you might actually be able to pick the vehicle up with it. Before I get started on the bumper though, I'm going to make a tie-in kit that the bumper can bolt onto. If you look at the frame here, you can see the 4 bolts that the bumper would connect to, and behind that exists the frame rail that's connected to the actual vehicle. You've got some excess metal here, and one of the mods that a lot of people do is they cut that out so that they can see up inside the frame, and then they're able to slide box section in, which is then bolted to the holes that already exist underneath the frame that tie into the tow bar. And when the whole thing's actually connected together, it makes for a very rigid, solid setup. There we go. It's looking good. Managed to clear it away quite cleanly, and this outer cut hole that I've made is flush with the sides of the inside of the rear frame there. So I'm going to shoot off to the to a friend of mine's. He has a place in the village onward from here. There's a lot of metal fab, and I'm going to try and get some box section that can slot in there nicely. Probably go for something like 5mm. So I'm back from the fabricators, and while I was there, a friend of mine offered to cut out some of the bolt clearances inside the box with a plasma cutter, which just made things much easier for me. So this part slots in, like so, and then this part is going to be welded onto that, like so. So we have 3 bolts holding that piece of box underneath, 4 bolts holding that with the bumper connected to it. I wanted it to be longer than that, but if you look at the original brackets that go in there to hold the tow bar onto the frame, you'll see that they've got like raised points, so you can't just slide a big old bit of box in there and expect it to keep going. But what I will do at some point is come back to this and see whether on the underside of the frame I can build an extended tying kit that goes down to the anti-roll bar mounting point and then perhaps comes off there and connects to the sill. Nice. So one thing I do need to do, and I should have done it first, is take out a section here on the bottom. It's because this needs to come through there on the inside like that and poke out the front there, and then actually tie the whole bottom section in. The last bit we have to do is obviously put this in either side, mark the holes from underneath, and then get those drilled out. Probably oversize them actually, so there's a bit of leeway for things to jig around, because this isn't going to directly be threaded into. So it's the following day and things have moved on a little bit. I've had a shave, I had to go out and do some stuff, so I had to leave this and go out. But I've come back to it early this morning and got it all finished, and I thought I'd show you how they look now. They've changed quite a bit, as you can probably see. We have 5 holes on the bottom, and remember the original inserts, they had 5 nuts on them, and there was a raised part. That was because there's like an exhaust bracket hanger on the driver's side or passenger side if you're in the States or any other country. So I had to make that groove basically there, and I did the same there as well. That one is where it's needed, that one it isn't actually needed, but it just ended up being very similar. So I made them longer, and I also cut the nuts off of the original insert and welded them. So this is now the new insert. So the bumper connects to here, and then this portion here will connect to the rear tyre carrier. Looking at it, I've gone the long way around a short trip. So all I really needed to do is have the box section this long, cut a piece underneath there for that piece inside the frame basically that needs clearance. And again, if we look at this, we don't actually need that cut out either. I could have just had a hole there, backed the bolt off for the leaf spring, had kept this as one solid piece of box section and just screwed the bolt back in to go through a hole, and it would have been stronger. But I don't think for the job at hand this is it needs to be any stronger than it is now. It's already kind of over-engineered in terms of the amount of metal I've used. But this side's a little bit different actually, because you have the filler pipes for the fuel tank going through like a big oval piece of metal in the frame, so it has to stop there. One thing I won't be doing with these though is painting them, and you might think that's a really stupid idea not to paint something like this because it will just rust and cause problems. But with things like this going inside the frame, I tend not to paint them, and the frame on my vehicle is filled with this stuff here. This is Dinatrol. This is an amazing product really, and you can't expect it to stop really flaky, terrible rust, but if you've got a bit of surface rust, you can't reach it, it will stop it growing. And I've used this product for a long time now and had nothing but good results from it. So I filled the insides of these with this product here, and then used Tetraseal, which is like a very heavy wax grease. So I'm going to paint all of these with this stuff here, let it all set, so it does have a setting time, it needs to kind of harden, and but more like a wax that you can kind of push with your finger so it doesn't go rock hard, and then they'll be ready to insert in. If I just insert them in with this still wet, it's just going to come off, and I don't really want it to do that. So let's get them painted. So these have got a heavy coat on them now, and they're actually already starting to set. You can thin it down with a little bit of white spirit or thinners to get this stuff to kind of move a bit more fluidly, but I just prefer to use this stuff here to do the creeping and getting in the nooks and crannies. Really good for getting in between spot welds and seams when you've got like two pieces of metal that meet, is what it's really designed for. But this is a good heavy coating, it's going to protect it. Once that's set, you'll be able to touch it, it won't come off in your hands, it will be something you can actually pick up and use, but it will be soft like wax, you know, it won't be wet like it is now. And that will sit inside the frame. A little bit of grease in between the mating surfaces, put the bolts in, and we should be good to go, and that should be able to stay in there. And much like the rest of the frame at the back, which is rust free, this should be too. Because obviously that stuff is excellent really. Just doing these sorts of preventions are quite important really if you want a vehicle to last a long time. So we'll leave this overnight and I'll see you in the morning. It's a chilly morning. Had to fire up the old space heater just to warm this place up a bit. It's colder in here than it is outside. But these are looking great. They're actually all dry, the wax is set. Still tacky and obviously soft to the touch, but doesn't come off on your fingers anymore. I've also painted the bumper as well this morning. One reason why I got the heater going, just to warm the space up, because you never want to do spray painting in a cold, damp environment. And I used an etch primer and then used a truck bed liner to do the rest. And it's come out really nicely. Also done a bit of work on the tyre carrier too. Put in some extra pieces just to stiffen up the actual beam so it acts a little bit more like a cross member between the two inserts that we're going to put in. So everything's ready to go, and we'll get the Jeep reversed in and get these installed. Bumper on there, just line it up like that. The last bolt, just do them up snug. Not crazy tight, or else you'll strip the nut behind and then the horror begins all over again. Even worse though. But it's sitting out a little bit further than it was before, because obviously we made that tie-in plate in the back there, and it's all in there great, and it's all lined up properly at the bottom. I found some 10.9s as well, tensile strength bolts, so I think they're all 10.9 apart from one here which is like a cheese bolt. It's like a B&Q cheese bolt. That needs replacing. But I'll replace that as soon as I find a 10.9. So that's it. Tie-in kit completed, rear bumper completed. Two jobs I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and I've done them as well as I can really. I think the actual tie-in kit could have been made a lot quicker and with less materials, using one piece of box like we talked about earlier. But I think as it stands, it's very strong. It's far too strong really for its intended use. So the bumper's looking great as well. The end bits are brilliant. The actual protection on the rear quarter panel, I'm really happy with the way that turned out. And amazingly, the 2mm baffles, they have strengthened the bumper tremendously. When you pick it up by those end bits, the end bits barely move at all. They do still move a touch, but hardly at all. So I'm amazed how much that's actually strengthened it, because before you could actually manipulate the angle they sat at, because the C-channel was just a piece of C-channel. So what we're going to do next is, remember that very last bolt on the tie-in that we inserted in the back of the frame? That is going to be connected to an L section, so a piece of angle iron, maybe 5mm, and a bit of box will come off of that, and we'll weld it to that piece that's sticking out that protects rear quarter panel. So it'll all link together really nicely. So I hope you enjoyed this vid. See you very soon in another one. Thanks again guys, take care.